The last episode affected Travis because Tiber took him on the spiritual timeline to World War II and a Nazi concentration camp. He saw how evil humans could become, and he had many questions answered by Tiber about why humankind could be so terrible to others when they wanted to accomplish what they felt they needed out of their lives. Travis had some sleepless nights and depressing daytime hours that followed. It wasn't because he felt he would ever repeat those evil men's actions, but he wasn't sure that he could do something about such things happening. He felt that he was sitting around waiting for terrible things to occur. This kind of thinking brought the subject of believing into his mind, and he began to obsess about that subject. Did bad things happen because he believed that they would? Or could he somehow assist in keeping those negative things from happening if he were to believe that they couldn't happen? Then he began to doubt that he had any influence over those things even taking place. It was way beyond his ability to solve the problem, and he knew that he would have to ask Tiber about it. He wanted the subject of belief to be the next lesson. Yes, sir. The answers to this and more were what he wanted. So he called upon Tiber to appear. Tiber didn't appear, so Travis thought harder and insisted that he show up. Perhaps in some animal or insect guise, of course, so he was constantly alert for something appearing. He still didn't appear, so Travis grimaced and then decided that he would have to wait until Tiber decided to show up on his own. Tiber could sometimes be real cranky, and perhaps this was one of those times. A week went by with no evidence of Tiber appearing. Now Travis was getting a bit worried and annoyed. He didn't fear that something had happened to Tiber. After all, if something could happen to an immortal soul, what trouble might we all be subject to endure? Something else must be happening, and Travis began to be quite concerned. Another week or so had elapsed. Travis, although still concerned, of course, began to focus on other things besides looking out of the corner of his eyes all of the time, waiting for Tiber to pop into view. He was riding in the passenger seat of his father's car, and they were heading out of New York City to spend a long weekend at his grandparents' cabin on a lake upstate in the Catskill Mountains. His father was driving, and his mother and sister were in the back seat. He was looking forward to returning to the lake and thought a lot about Tiber because he first met him there when they started his lessons. As they drove along, Travis happened to look up and saw one of the green traffic signs overhead that said belief in bold letters. He thought this was rather strange, as that was the subject he wanted a lesson for. Further along, another green traffic sign appeared that said, believe, in bold lettering. Travis started to ask his father if he had seen these signs but realized that he would have mentioned it if he had. As they progressed, he saw more signs, one after another in quick succession. They said, trust, doubt, accept, consider, understand, affirm, believed, believing, and then a final sign saying, see you at the lake. Travis was overwhelmed, and then he smiled, realizing that he was happy that he had not asked his father if he had seen the signs. He would have turned around and taken Travis to a head shrink, but he was also glad to know that Tiber had not forsaken him, and now he looked forward to getting to the lake even more than he had when they first started. When they arrived at the lake, they went into the cabin and found his grandparents there already. Travis didn't know for sure if they were coming and was very happy that they had. His weekend was going to be complete because all the people he loved the most, except for Anna, would be there. He also had the chance to get together with Tiber as well, at some time during the extended weekend. He now knew that this would happen. They took up the first day with family things. They went boating and fishing and had the fantastic family barbecue outside at the edge of the lakefront. The weather was beautiful, with a moderately crisp cool temperature in the morning and another moderate, mildly warm temperature in the afternoon, which allowed for some swimming. The next day, Travis left the cabin early for a walk around the lake by himself. Everyone was used to him doing this, as he had developed that habit many years ago. The entire family respected his wishes in that regard. He decided to make his way to the top of the cliff. This was as he had when he met Tiber for the first time on this spot. The view from the top over the lake was still breathtaking, and Travis knew he could never tire of it. And as he concentrated his focus on his surroundings, the scents of pine, the unique odors of the various other trees and shrubs all wafted over him. And as before, he even detected subtle odors coming from the rock formations he was on or close to. The air was exceptionally clear, and Travis enjoyed looking over the expanse of the lake. He marveled at the various patterns that the sunlight and light breezes created with ripples sliding over the lake's surface. High up in the crystal blue sky, he noticed no cloud visible anywhere in the brilliant blue panorama. He did see a bird flying high and traveling at a fast speed. It turned as he watched it, and it seemed to be coming directly towards his position. The closer it came, Travis began to sense that now, finally, Tiber had decided to make his presence known. Travis stood on the edge of the cliff and waited for the eagle to come ever closer to him. As the eagle neared his position, it changed course abruptly and flew close over Travis' head, ruffling up his hair, and then headed back out over the lake. Travis stood in disappointment, and then he heard a voice coming from behind him. He turned and saw a large mountain lion lying down by his legs. It said,
"That was one beautiful eagle, wasn't it?"
I might have known you would do something like this. And you were not even original enough to use a different spiritual introduction form this time.
Why should I? We first met here, and I was in this mountain lion form, and you loved it, didn't you?
I guess so. In any case, I'm glad to see you. I was concerned that you were not going to show up. I asked and asked and asked, and you didn't show. Were you angry with me?
Tiber's cougar form began to fade, and in its place stood a handsome man's form in a plaid shirt and khaki pants. He had a neat beard which was unusual for Tiber, but it still was. He said,
"No, I wasn't angry, but I was a little disappointed that your request came across more like a demand. The attitude caused me not to be very much in a hurry, even though I love to do these lessons with you."
I thought that you might have taken it that way, and I am sorry. I was just very much wanting to have this lesson and thought you might respond faster if I was urgent about it.
Sure, and you thought I was a genie in a bottle and would pop out at your command. It doesn't work that way, boy.
I know it doesn't. It won't happen again. Now can we get on with the lesson?
I suppose we will have to. It seems that I can't fight this teenager attitude thing that has control of you. So let's get going. And we will start like we normally do. Give me your idea of what you think a belief is.
Okay.
I learned from Merriam-Webster that belief is a state or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in a person, a thing, or an idea.
It is accepted or considered to be true or perhaps held as an opinion. If you are convinced about something, it is a belief. How is that?
Good. As usual, we will try to expand on that from two perspectives. First, from the earthly realm point of view, and then from the spiritual application of what a belief is. While you're living in this earthly plane of existence, it is often left to philosophers to define how you should understand a certain thought. In the case of the thought that is belief, the majority of philosophers seem to posit that it is simply a matter of what is true and what is false when deciding whether to believe in something or not. Of course, that leaves the problem of determining what is true and not in any given subject. That can, of course, be very difficult. Now to continue, let's take an example of good or bad. You can have difficulty determining exactly where an action falls in either a good or bad category. Regarding religious beliefs, one would think that the 10 Commandments are something we can all believe in. Let's discuss this and see if you are likely to believe what you read or abide by. Let's start with the first one. I am the Lord, your God, and you shall have no other gods before me. Now, you have no way to determine if this is a true statement, so you have to accept it on faith alone. Faith is entirely distinct from belief, but you are free to accept this idea and use it if you desire. The second one is, you shall not make unto me any graven images. The term graven is further defined in Exodus 24:5. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. Like commandment number 1, you have no idea of what a deity looks like, but if you have decided to accept one by faith, this commandment restricts you from making a representation of a deity of any kind. One would assume that sons of deities, such as Jesus or his mother, Mary, are exemptions to the ruling. In any event, your faith will dictate how you want to believe in cases such as this. The third commandment, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Okay, if you want to take the first commandment seriously, you can accept this third one as well on the faith basis, but as we discussed, not the belief basis. And now here is the fourth one. Remember to keep holy the Lord's day. By accepting the previous commandments, You can accept this one by faith as well. The fifth one is, honor your father and your mother. This is a good and proper thing to do, particularly if your father and mother are deserving of honor, which they usually are, but not always. However, I can't see where this has to be a belief or even a faith thing. It is a practical and nice thing to do even for a heathen. Number 6. You shall not kill. We generally agree with this, but almost every culture had made many exceptions. Early Christians, Jews, and Muslims often killed with impunity and justify their actions because of war, anger, ridding themselves of others they didn't like, etc. Even their Bible says that you could smite others, including children who talk back or wives who stray or do other unwieldy things. And then, what about other animals you enjoy eating, and you must kill them to do that? And is capital punishment a good thing to do? This commandment is entirely too broad to urge most people to believe in it without clarification. Consider number 7. You shall not commit adultery. This demand is something good to discuss as well. Some religions consider this commandment hard and unforgivable, but they don't give a call to action for their followers when the crime occurs. Most people don't know what to do about it other than say shame on you. Here again, there is nothing to believe in one way or the other. It is generally not good for a husband or wife, and we don't know if this applies to non-married couples. It's a confusing commandment. Number 8 is you shall not steal. This is an easy one. Whether your religion or where you exist within a culture, it is sensible to say that you should not steal. First, it is wrong, and secondly, you may get caught and make the rest of your life difficult and miserable. You should most probably believe in this one without too much conflict. Number 9. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Honoring this makes good sense, and most likely, if believed in, it would keep you honest. Do not accuse your neighbor if it is the wrong thing to do. It works pretty well to believe in this commandment. And finally, here is commandment number 10. You shall not covet. This suggests, I think, that you should not lust after your neighbor's wife or, from an opposite perspective, a husband. But in reality, it means that any attempt to grab a hold of anything that doesn't belong to you, physically or by wishful thinking, is a wrongful act. Here again, it's good advice and makes sense, but the commandment doesn't indicate what the call to action should be if you do any of this. Here again, forget the belief aspect and take it as excellent advice.
Tiber summed this up.
Now, in a review of all these commandments, they have always been considered something you should believe in as opposed to being simple rules to follow. It was, after all, said that they were given to humankind directly from God. But as you can see from this simple analysis, belief is not the feeling that will serve you, and you should use common or good sense when dealing with these issues. They are indeed the most proper and good advice. This same advice goes for non-religious dealings.
I hadn't thought much about the 10 Commandments, but I agree with you that belief isn't how I felt about them, and I agree with you that they are mostly good sense issues. Perhaps I have to ask you a direct question. When should I apply belief rather than any other sense such as using common sense?
Tiber answered.
A belief is an attitude that something is surely the case, that the thought or action we are considering is true, and that it is true all of the time. We know that nighttime will always be devoid of the sun, and daytime will contain the sun even if clouds hide it. This fact is a truism and worthy of belief. Snow has always been white or nearly white and not blue or green or yellow. So this truism can be considered a reliable belief. We can believe these and many other things that occur without any doubt. And when that doubt is strong, the thought or occurrence should not be considered a belief. If an action is proper but subject to a revision, it should only be considered faith. For instance, if you fall in love with someone or something, you may say you believe you are in love, but you have a sense of faith that you love that person or thing. It can change instantly, and therefore you should not consider that you believe but rather have faith that you are in love. This concept seems to be a rather silly differentiation, but it is true. This concept is often posited that there are different degrees of belief. Although this may also be true, just as there are degrees of faith, a preponderance of truism must be evident to consider it a proper belief.
Travis offered.
How important is determining that you believe in something?
It is very important because a solid belief will assist you in establishing your existence and your life's goals. And when it is understood and applied on a spiritual basis, it becomes the impetus for causing things to happen.
What does that mean?
It means that belief is the first step to create anything. Do you recall my giving you my 4 crowns of creative endeavors?
I do. You called it the I web process, and I liked it. The I stood for imagination. You said you used imagination to start the creative process. The W stood for willpower, which you used to propel you into the direction you needed to accomplish or obtain something. The E stood for effort, and you said this was the hardest of the 4 crowns because it had to be exerted as sincerely and as prolonged as necessary to cause your creations to manifest themselves. And finally, the B was for belief. The soul often wants to conjure up the desired creation but aborts the effort because it does not believe enough. You said that without belief in what you are trying to accomplish, it is pretty hard, if not impossible, to reach your creative goals.
Excellent. You remembered the 4 crowns, or I web, almost word for word. And when you are dealing in the spiritual realms, belief becomes the essential ingredient in the recipe of life. If you don't believe, your imagination is always weak. If you don't believe in it, your willpower is also always weak and ineffective. You won't attempt to put an appropriate effort into whatever you attempt to create. If you doubt what you are trying to accomplish in both the spiritual or the obstructed realms, you will fail in the task at hand. Therefore, you should consider doubt as to the opposite of belief. This statement is the secret. If you wish to believe, you must remove doubt from your mind. They are not compatible. This word is important for you to remember.
I got it.
Good.
Thank you very much. I knew that this would be an important lesson, and I was right. I had a feeling that it was important to believe in those things I should believe in and doubt other things that I shouldn't. And perhaps I should have believed in you more by realizing that you would show up when it was appropriate and not at my beck and call.
And thank you, my boy, for understanding that. There is no way I will ever ignore you when you need me. You know that, but there is a time and place for everything that happens, particularly in my realm. And the time is now for me to leave you and attend to other things.
Goodbye, Tiber. See you next time. Also, please believe that I love you and always will. That is my belief for the day.
I love you too. I will conjure up a really good lesson for our next meeting, and perhaps we can spiritually travel to someplace really exciting and interesting. Look forward to it, my boy, and believe that I will do that.
And with that, the form that was Tiber misted up. First into the form of the mountain lion once again. And from that into an eagle, he flew off the cliff and out over the shimmering lake. Travis signed and thought inwardly about how lucky he was to have these lessons with Tiber and now to go back to the cabin to be with his family. He thought, what did I do to deserve this life? And then a very strong inner voice said, perhaps you now believe that you have earned it and will continue to work at it. Travis just nodded his head and began his walk back to the cabin. Everyone has their ideas of what belief is. They confuse it with faith and perhaps other mental images within their minds. This episode goes a long way to clear those confusing thoughts. Tiber makes a good point of pointing out the differences, and this was important to Travis. Tiber was also very original in introducing Travis to the subject matter. I got a kick out of the family ride to the Catskills from New York City. Travis was getting discouraged by the fact that Tiber seemed to be avoiding him. He had been requesting a lesson, and Tiber did not respond. But Tiber eventually showed up with his unique ways of coming around for a lesson. I am looking forward to episode number 16, about adventures. I love adventures, and I am sure Tiber will introduce Travis to some pretty good ones. Be sure to stick around. Please visit our website, theemeraldcrystal.com to see, read, or hear more of our literary offerings. You might purchase our spiritual thriller novels, Quest for the Emerald Crystal Book Number 1, Spiritual Warriors in the Bahamas or Quest for the Emerald Crystal Book Number 2, Spiritual Warriors in Belize, and Quest for the Emerald Crystal Book Number 3, Spiritual Warriors in the Caribbean, within the website or on Amazon.com.